Day. Welcome to my new video about World War One, and technically it's taken based on Armistice Day, and this has been how long has it been since, okay, it's been a while since I uploaded the video, and also I've spent a long time trying to get this thing, trying to get this to work, and did bad recordings. Okay, anyway, so, let's continue with the video, okay? And to talk about World War One, we need to talk about a different pair of wars, technically. The Balkans Wars, which took place between 1912 and 1913. These wars were involved with Greece, Serbia, and Bulgaria, and they chased the Ottomans nearly out of the Balkans. And they won, except that tiny bit there with Constantinople and Adrianople, but don't care about that. Doesn't exist anymore, okay? And everyone was happy with this, except Bulgaria, because they wanted to near called Macedonia. So they invaded their former friends, and, well, they lost. And anyway, set some things in mind, okay? Okay. And then, okay, Serbia wanted this area called Bosnia that was very Serb. Okay, so they wanted it. They wanted it a lot, and the people in Bosnia wanted to be Serbian. So a man called Gavrilo Princip shot Archduke Franz Ferdinand dead in Sarajevo, and this would start a chain of events. The Austro-Hungarians wanting the right to investigate it because somebody just killed their Archduke, which is kind of bad. They set out some demands. Austria-Hungary must be allowed to participate in the investigation into the assassination. Austria-Hungary wanted the guilty to face justice in the system in their country instead of Siberia, which is, quite bad for the nation. And they also demanded that Serbia ended all anti-Austrian terrorism, and they agreed to all but the criminal process demand. And so Austria-Hungary had actually not set out the demands, to get the people to face justice. They just wanted to invade Serbia, okay? For the act. So they declared war on Serbia and shelled Belgrade. Then Russia declared war on Austria-Hungary for declaring war on Serbia. And then Germany declared war on Russia for declaring war on Austria-Hungary for declaring war on Serbia. And then France declared war on Germany for declaring war on Russia for declaring war on Austria-Hungary for declaring war on Serbia, not Siberia, different things. And then Germans invaded France for Belgium, and the British didn't like that because Belgium was their friend and attacked Germany. Lightning round over, okay guys? So let's just take a little breath here. Okay, now the war is in motion, and Britain is trying to get to France trying to get to Belgium, so they can stop the Germans from getting into Belgium. And then France arrives in Belgium just there, and Britain takes a bit of time to get to the front. But by that time, Germany had already gone to nearly Paris, which is one of the farthest points they advanced during the war. But then Britain arrives in force and stops the Germans and pushes them back, because at this point the BEF wasn't, overpowered. They were overpowered instead of being just tons of men. Okay, and then after that they established the front line for Netherlands and Belgium. And then they decided to do something. They dug trenches. And then the Germans, seeing this and being attacked from the trenches, decided to dig their own trenches. And that is called trench warfare, and it started terrible. And then the war remained quite still for a while. And then the Eastern Front, which still exists, Germany and Austria-Hungary, remember he exists, and then decided to attack into Russia. Which it's quite effective because Russia doesn't really want to fight. It's not like they want to. Okay. And then back on the Western Front, nothing really happened. Like the front line will move a tiny bit. See, it moves like a couple of centimeters. That's about all you get. But then Germany started sinking ships to the U-boats, specifically a British Oceanic class liner, a sister ship of the Titanic called Lusitania, which makes America quite bad because there's a lot of Americans on it. And then on the Eastern Front, Bulgaria, and remember Bulgaria? Bulgaria remembers Bulgaria, and Bulgaria now wants to stab Serbia because, reasons. And then after that, the Ottomans decided that invading Russia is a good idea. It's not the winter yet, so it's not technically a bad idea. Right, okay, so And then the British tried to invade Gallipoli, the British Commonwealth technically, which doesn't work well because they have trenches, more trenches. And then the German High Seas Fleet and the British Grand Fleet decide that war is a good idea, that fighting each other is probably what they're meant to do, and they take big blows out at each other, mainly with three or two British battlecruisers exploding. British battlecruisers dying to win the best. Now, a year later, 1916 or 1915 to 4, the British decided to try something new. At the Battle of the Somme, they introduced these brand new vehicles that were armoured fighting combat vehicles that instead of going just shooting at the Germans, they could go over their trenches. Very neat, and it worked out well. And it would lead to advances. At this point, Germany's getting quite scared because, you're fighting a war with the largest power in the world, one of the most powerful nations in the world, or most powerful, and France and Belgium. So they decided to send a telegram to Mexico, but the British intercept it and send it to America, which then leads to war. The message is basically, could they stop America from intervening, because, it's a big nation, has a lot of stuff. And then anyway, on the Eastern Front, Russia decides to start rushing and revolutionises. And then immediately surrender. They weren't that brave. And anyone remember the tanks? Well, the tanks remember the tanks. And the Germans decide to crash build a tank, the AV-7. They build a few of them, about 20. And 3 of them just so happened to meet 3 British tanks in the Battle of Villers-Bocage, which was the lead in the Germans getting destroyed because British tanks have 2 guns, they only have 1. And then no, that was in 1918, and now the end of the war occurs in a train carriage in a forest. And out of the men sent to the war, and out of the war, 20 million deaths occurred. 9.7 million were military personnel from the front lines, and 10 million were civilians, which were hurt in the German bombings of areas or artillery barrages. And it would also lead to the end of 4 empires: the Ottomans, the Germans, the Russian Empire, and the Austro-Hungarians. And the start of the setting of the sun on the Great British Empire. And now, a moment to remember those who died in the war.